had to obtain an export license from the British government. Terpil and his associates had to obtain what's called an end-user certificate. An end-user certificate is simply a document by a friendly government saying that weapons which are now stored in the, within the territory of another country have been purchased and are going to be used by the government of the friendly country. That document is indispensable for obtaining an export license.
The weapons would be consigned for all outward purposes to the Philippines. Of course, they would not go to the Philippines.
So it was an illegal operation?
Illegal in the sense that the ultimate destination was not as registered, yes.
Anybody really from any group, left wing, right wing, who wanted to get machine guns from you could get them out of a warehouse in England?
Yes.
By using a phony end-user certificate?
By using, yes.
Frank Terpil made it clear to the undercover detectives that they wanted a payment of $56,000 in cash, which would be used for the bribery that was to take place in the Philippines to obtain the end-user certificate.
Now, this payment of $56,000 for the phony end-user certificate, I mean, how could you be sure that somebody in an official position in England didn't contact the government of the Philippines to inquire whether the weapons were actually going to them?
The $56,000 would be to expedite the paperwork in totality in UK and the Philippines, both.
So people have to be paid off in the UK and in the Philippines?
Some people, yes.
On December the 14th, 1979, undercover detective Jimmy Rodriguez arrived in London to acquire 10,000 machine guns for a mythical terrorist group. He was told to meet Terpil at this hotel in Lancaster Gate, where 7 men would be waiting in a conference room on the ground floor. When Rodriguez entered, Terpil was already typing the contract. He introduced the detective to his associates. There was a retired Marine colonel who would obtain the phony end-user certificate, Sam Yurick, the shipper, who is now wanted in America for drug trafficking, and this man, Robin Braid Taylor, who would take Rodriguez to view and test-fire the weapons in a warehouse in Manchester, England. This character, Robin Braid Taylor, the intermediary, did he realize that he was involved in an illegal deal?
Absolutely.
Why do you say that?
He had extensive conversations with Detective Rodriguez during the trip to and from the Interarms warehouse in Manchester. And Detective Rodriguez said that Robin Braid Taylor made it completely clear that he understood all of the ramifications of the deal.
Did you get the feeling that Braid Taylor was supporting you out of some ideological conviction because you were posing as a right-wing terrorist?
He was in it for the money, period. I don't think he was interested whether I was from the right or the left. If I had said I was a communist, I'm sure he would have given me the same deal.
Rodriguez made it clear that your middleman didn't care at all whether the guns went to gentlemen of the far left, the far right, where they went to, as long as they were paid for.
Totally unethical.
As you were talking to Braid Taylor, did you begin to get the feeling that England was one of those places that was easy for terrorists to obtain weapons? I mean, much easier than, say, the United States?
Oh, definitely. I would say UK is much easier. That's why they picked it. That's why they lived there. That's why they kept the home there. Because it was an easy port.
2 years after Rodriguez was taken to view the guns, we recreated every stage of his journey.
When we arrived in Manchester, red beard, an individual with a red beard was waiting behind the wheel of a station wagon. He was introduced to me by Robin as Hamilton. He drove us about 5 minutes, and then he pulled into an alley. At that point, I looked up, and there in these gigantic bold letters, I saw Interarms. And Interarms is a very big company. We went up to the 3rd floor, and there was a lot of weapons on the walls and machine guns on the floor. And Hamilton went up to a caged-in area, and behind this caged-in area was what he stated was 12,500 submachine guns. British 9mm Mark IIs and Mark IIIs. Hamilton says, we'll go down to the range and we'll test fire these weapons. gave me the weapon. I told him I was pleased, and that as far as I was concerned, we had a deal. Hamilton, like I said, was in a hurry, so he scooted us right out. And we're headed back toward the train station. At this point, Hamilton did a strange thing. He turned back at me. I was sitting in the back seat. And then he said, "Are you from the Philippines?" And I said, "No, of course I'm from the States." At this point, I looked over at Robin and said, "Robin, I hope, you know, he understands that this is going to the Caribbean and not the Philippines." Hamilton didn't answer or say anything. He looked over at Robin with a stare. Robin looked back at me and made us, with his finger up to his mouth, telling me to shut up.
That is an absolute lie, and you may be very, very, very sure of that.
Why do you think that Rodriguez, who's a senior detective in the New York City Police, why do you think he should lie under oath?
I can only assume that his memory failed him on that particular occasion.
He's a businessman. He manages the place. And I produce an export license and say that these weapons are going to wherever they are. He releases them.
Did he know your story was untrue?
I'm sure, but it's not his business at this point. The British government is where I think the loophole lies. Because if they could supply an export license on an end-user certificate for the Philippines without checking with the Philippines and making sure that these weapons were in fact going there, they're at fault.
Let's talk about the loopholes in the British government. What did Braid Taylor say about his contacts?
Robin mentioned to me that he had contacts in the higher-ups of the UK and that there would be no problems as far as the end-user certificate. He also
Did he name any of his contacts?
Pardon me?
Did he name any?
No, he mentioned Colonel Warren. That was the only person he mentioned by name.
What did he say that this Colonel Warren could do for you?
Colonel Warren could walk the papers through and that he could assure that there would be no problems as far as the end-user certificate, that the end-user would be issued.
Tell us about this Colonel Warren.
He's obviously retired colonel, not a active duty colonel that had been involved in several arms deals of a fairly good size. He had worked in conjunction with other companies besides Interarms and was well known throughout the military and civilian circuits.
When we contacted Colonel Warren, he claimed that his only role had been to make the original approach to Interarms that led to the visit, because he thought that one of the people involved was, quote, an ex-CIA agent which put some credulity on the inquiry, end quote. When our leaders talk about a terrorist, they usually want us to think of the man who commits the act of violence. But you're talking about something much more frightening. Boardroom terrorists.
It's very scary. I've been involved around terrorists for a long time, and most terrorists, small terrorists, urban guerrilla warfare terrorists, have to